Hi, everybody. My name is Nicholas Bader. I'm a senior research executive at ORB International, and I'm here to present my CBA entitled Weighing the Costs and Benefits of Hiring a Full-Time Scripting Professional. So first, I'd like to give you some organizational context about the company I work for. ORB International is a small women-owned research agency that specializes in data collection, analysis, and program evaluation in complex environments around the globe. We operate in 115 countries and are regularly commissioned to conduct mixed methods research that incorporates best practices in qualitative and quantitative data collection. So founded in the United Kingdom, the United States office opened in 2011 and is currently located in Charlottesville, Virginia. As of date, ORB has conducted more than 3 million quantitative interviews. The organization serves a wide range of United States government and international clients. So now a couple of words about the CBA problem statement. So scripting can be defined as the process by which a technical specialist writes code to upload a survey instrument or a questionnaire prepared in a standard word processing document into a data collection application. Ultimately, in the world of data collection, this is what enables field surveyors to administer surveys while they are in the field. So here you can see I've included a picture of what a script looks like. This is from a humanitarian assistance project. At our organization, scripting is currently outsourced to a subcontractor with years of experience and proven competencies. However, as the company has grown, the organization's project portfolio has expanded to the extent that business strategists are considering whether an in-house full-time scripting professional would be less costly and potentially more profitable than an outsourced contractor. So how are we going to answer our question? We're going to use cost-benefit analysis. So this analysis relies on the core principles and concepts of CBA to weigh the potential costs and benefits of option A against those of option B. Option A, again, being hiring a full-time scripting professional, and option B being the status quo, which is maintaining the contractor. The purpose of this study is to determine which option would result in the most net positive future cash flows over the next 5 years, as determined by a key metric, benefit cost ratio, or BCR. So for this analysis, we've calculated and compared a BCR for each option, option A and option B. So to carry out this analysis, I've collected some data. The primary data collection method used was a small company survey administered to internal stakeholders. So my colleagues, we are a small group, a very small company actually. We have 6 analysts. So the survey was administered to 6 analysts working at ORB International, who are data management and quality control specialists, and who would be directly impacted by the potential new hires. So these are key stakeholders in the CBA situation. The survey was used to assign monetary values to the potential costs and benefits of the proposed intervention based on self-reported time spent on task and other variables that we'll go over shortly. I also carried out a little bit of market research just to get a better idea of hiring expenses, including benefits packages and talent recruitment expenses for a new employee. Not knowing anything about the world of HR, this was enlightening, to say the least. And then I used some company data, basically historical cost of outsourced scripting tasks to kind of compare the two options. So here is a comprehensive pros and cons list for the proposed intervention. So the CBA method requires dressing a comprehensive pros and cons list, then applying monetary values to each anticipated cost and benefit. The costs and benefits associated with the proposed intervention or the full-time hire can be broken down as follows. So the costs associated with hiring a full-time scripter would be obviously a full-time employee salary, health insurance expenses, an annual 401k contribution, which is another benefit the company offers, a wellness benefit, paid time off or PTO and paid holidays, talent acquisition fees, potentially a new laptop. I went ahead and factored that in just in case, as scripting is obviously kind of a tech-heavy task that might require some top-tier equipment. And then emergency scripting costs, which we will talk about later in our assessment of risks. So all of these things, I basically use company data and some market research to figure out exactly how much they would cost, or at least to estimate how much they would cost. So for the benefits of hiring a full-time scripter, we would have increased productivity, so reallocated hours that are currently spent by data managers and analysts on scripting tasks that would be taken over by a full-time employee that the contractor currently does not do. Also reallocated script checking hours. Money saved from intern labor, as interns also spend quite a bit of time, and thus we spend resources on checking scripts, which is time consuming and rather tedious, to be honest. And then fewer scripting errors, which would ultimately lead to money saved on fewer mistakes. So I went ahead and calculated an annual cost of scripting mistakes over the past 5 years and worked that into the CBA forecast. So for our main findings. So we assign monetary values to the estimated costs and benefits by using the relevant data sources. This included crossing self-reported time spent on task with hourly rates for employee labor. The calculations were then incorporated into a forecast of positive and negative cash flows for the next 5 years. BCR was calculated for both the proposed intervention and the status quo for comparative purposes. This analysis finds that the expected BCR of the proposed intervention or the full-time hire is $9,595,585 over $345,678, meaning that for every dollar invested in a scripted product, the company would make $27.76 in return. You can see that that is lesser or a lower BCR than option 2, which is the status quo, maintaining the contractor, which would ultimately lead to a higher BCR of $29.88, meaning for every dollar invested in a scripted product, the company would make $29.88 in return. So the main takeaway from this analysis is that ORB International is not advised to go forward with the proposed intervention of hiring a full-time scripter because the BCR is higher for the status quo. Now, there are a few points to discuss to kind of qualify these conclusions. So now I'd like to talk through potential areas of bias as well as risks associated with the proposed intervention. So in terms of bias, so because the employees, myself, of course, I participated in this survey, and my colleagues, who I know very well and who know the purpose of this survey very well, are the stakeholders that are most vested, right, in the proposed intervention or potentially most impacted by this change. The quantitative data collection for the assessment is subject to an assessment of bias. Basically, the people who responded to the survey may not have been completely honest in their responses because they are vested stakeholders, right? So the risk of positivity bias is high for employees who have a strong working relationship with the current contractor. Again, we are a very, very small company. My colleagues, a number of them are actually very close to the contractor, even though it's more of a remote kind of distance relationship, professional relationship these days with the pandemic. That being said, even if it turned out that the contractor was not cost beneficial or not very cost effective and that he were replaced, that would not be a good thing for employee morale, for example. So that being said, the employees may be more likely to respond in an optimistic manner to questions about time spent on scripting related tasks, thinking that if they describe their current workload as manageable, the contractor might be maintained, regardless of the outcomes of this study. So the figure demonstrates in this slide the unanimous sentiment of satisfaction with current scripting contractor among, well, myself included and my colleagues. And this is really just to illustrate that we really like the contractor. He's a great person and he does great work, regardless of how that might affect our own workloads if he were replaced. So comparing that figure with these two figures, we also collected data on kind of attitudes towards scripting. We find that close working relationships with the contractor did not prevent most analysts from reporting candid feelings that they spend too much time on scripting related tasks. Right, so that's your first figure on the left. Please tell me to what degree you agree with the following statement. I spend too much time on scripting related tasks. And we had about 66% of respondents agreeing and an additional almost 17% strongly agreeing. Moreover, a large majority of respondents observed that their time spent on scripting related tasks would be better spent on other work related tasks. As I said, this can be a pretty grueling process, but nevertheless, survey respondents seem to be pretty honest in their assessment of how much time it takes to do scripting stuff. Therefore, it can be concluded that the issue of respondent candor is unlikely to have strongly affected the self-reported estimates on time spent on scripting-related tasks. I guess all of this is a way, kind of a short or maybe not so short of a way of saying that, we're assuming that survey respondents were honest in this analysis and that the measurements are thus valid, which seems to be supported by how people are responding, despite the fact that they really like the contractor. Moving on, so a quick word on risk assessment. So there are a number of risks associated with the proposed intervention. One of them is kind of built into the forecast, as I mentioned earlier, the emergency scripting expenses. One of them is not built into the forecast for potential costs, although it possibly could be. So employee turnover is costly and as such has a potential to make or break a potential investment. Possible costs associated with losing an employee include time spent on interviewing, screening, onboarding, training and management time, lost productivity, customer service and errors, and all kinds of other things that came up when I was doing some Google searching about this. So HR specialists estimate that employee turnover costs approximately 20% of employees' annual salary for a mid-range position, which this would probably entail. That being said, the forecast created for this analysis assumes that the full-time hire would not leave the company over the next 5 years. So that is a pretty big assumption and should be accounted for when considering this analysis conclusions. Emergency scripting needs. So these were built into the forecast. An emergency scripting need could be defined as an instance occurring during peak periods where an in-house full-time scripter might not be able to actually accomplish all of the work assigned to them. In these instances, we would probably have to go ahead and outsource some of the scripting needs regardless of having a full-timer. So we went ahead and built in an estimated $5,000 annual cost for emergency scripting expenses in the option A model. So kind of to reiterate our conclusion, this analysis has shown that the BCR of the status quo, so maintaining the outsourced scripting tasks and to the contractor, the contracting firm, is greater than the BCR of the proposed intervention, which is hiring a full-time scripting professional, which urges administrators to maintain the current business strategy in order to maximize return on investment in the most cost-beneficial manner. So I would say that this analysis is strong in that it does account for potential risks as well as biases, but it's limited in that it makes a major assumption that may affect the outcome of the CBA forecast. So in terms of limitations, a major paradigm shift, for example, away from one type of project and towards a different kind of project, would require additional forecasting and additional analysis. And the example here is, for example, if ORB were to move away from its current business model of being commissioned to conduct nationally representative surveys towards a more third-party monitoring heavy portfolio, that could potentially change the calculations to the point that they really wouldn't be useful. So third-party monitoring is basically a methodology that monitors outputs and outcomes of humanitarian assistance programs. So TPM, these are generally big long-term contracts, and they are very, very, very scripting heavy. That being said, everything would have to be recalculated. So there is a key assumption here that in order for kind of these conclusions to be valid, you'd really have to assume that we weren't awarded any other large TPM contracts. So I think that's it. Thank you for your time and your attention. And I hope this was enlightening in some way or interesting in others. And have a great evening.